Ingin Terzi just recently revealed something about Devon Lert's current strength level that has massive implications. Something that, if it is in fact true, will give Devon a huge advantage in this upcoming match against Levon. Just hearing what Ingin said off the top of my head sounds like it might be a little bit too impressive to be true. However, Ingin says that Devon personally told him this, so we can't just write it off. Let's take a look at the clip.
I asked Devon, about the pronation lift he does. I said, what was your lift before you pull against Levon? He told me 135 pounds. And now he did 160. So whenever he does 162 pounds, he will be lifting 20% more than last time he pulled against Levon.
So yesterday, I made a video about whether or not Devon has actually gained all that much strength over the last year. In this video, we covered how some of the numbers Devon has told us in the past don't seem to reflect any kind of improvement. If anything, it sounds like Devon got weaker, but as we know with Devon, anytime he is on camera, there's a pretty good chance that he is trolling either us or his opponents. But when Ingin Terzi says that Devon personally told him something, that is very different. In this case, Devon is not the on-camera version of himself that is trying to get into his opponent's head. He's talking to the guy who is trying to gauge opponents for him in the context of matchmaking. And in the past, Ingin seems to have communicated a pretty good representation of Devon's strength level. Now, let's talk about the actual lift. The reason this would normally be hard to believe is because of how insane the progression is. Currently, Devon has already hit 160 pounds on this same lift and might lift even more before the match takes place. If Devon's PR on this lift the last time he faced Levon was really only 135 pounds. This means that by the time he faces Levon this time, he will likely have increased his strength in the lift that is the very most applicable to his style by over 20%. This kind of increase in a lift that is this specific and from the starting point of the biggest match in your career is totally crazy. To put this into perspective, it's like Eddie Hall barely managing to deadlift 500 kilograms in the biggest moment of his strongman career. Then 2 years later, he comes back and deadlifts 600 kilograms. This kind of progress sounds almost impossible initially. Although, over the last couple years, Devon has totally changed his training methods. He has adopted a version of the Bulgarian method for arm wrestling, and it appears to be causing super rapid progress. But could it be enough to cause a 20% increase in strength this late into Devon's career? I guess we do have some pretty decent evidence for this, as Ingin is normally very accurate with these kinds of numbers. So if this is in fact true that Devon is 20% stronger than he was the last time, in the lift that directly correlates to his open top roll, and if Levon's level is equal, I have to think that Devon would crack Levon's wrist back based off of round 1 in 2022. Now, one thing that Neil brings up later in this podcast is the fact that this particular lift is only one aspect of the match in its entirety. There are so many building blocks of both athletes' style, and one single lift is not going to win or lose the whole match, and I totally agree with this assessment. However, I do think that while one lift won't win the whole match, one lift very well may be the deciding factor of the match. Of course, Devon's rise will need to stay somewhat intact, and he will need to be able to climb and adjust and eventually transition to a press if he ever wants to pin Levon. However, I think that things like Devon's ability to press will only be relevant if he first cracks Levon's wrist back. And if he does crack his wrist back and get a stop, I think his transitional game is already adequate to finish from that point. Maybe it takes him 2 to 3 minutes, but eventually it will be good enough. I think Levon's wrist going back is the deciding point of the match, and this lift Devon is doing translates directly to that happening. Let me know what you guys think about the apparent rate of progression we see from Devon. Do you think that Devon really has made a 20-ish% improvement, or do you think that there is some kind of misunderstanding here?